Wes-tone here. In this video, we're going to do an update on Kaspa, see what's happened since the last video, and we're going to explore a few topics outside of the wealth cycle strategy that are relevant to Kaspa. Since our last video, our power law curves have shifted down due to this period of underperformance. The power law is a dynamic model, so the exponent does shift down or up relative to where the price is. So we have shifted down. This is where we are now. Our target for 2025 has come down. Late 2025 targets somewhere around just north of $1.50, possibly up to $2. It is possible we outperform, just as we've underperformed here, given that we do have an altcoin cycle peak in 2025, as demonstrated by our Bitcoin and altcoin cycles here that we showed last time. The Bitcoin cycle bottomed November of 2022, and we've been up ever since, expecting a peak in Bitcoin and the broader markets in 2025. This alt season curve here is altcoin outperformance, so this doesn't mean that altcoins are going down. They're just underperforming Bitcoin during this period. So we're just starting to enter the phase of the cycle where altcoins should be outperforming Bitcoin. And where these two curves intersect around end of November 2025, we get the greatest constructive interference, which should be roughly where we'll see the blow off top, the peak across Bitcoin and altcoins. Sometime at the end of 2025, roughly. Since our last video, we were hanging right around 10 cents. We did bottom. That was a key support level. So we are a little bit out of the woods there. That was a little bit scary. We were worried that maybe that would break down further. It did bounce, kind of what we were hoping and expecting might happen with this high frequency cycle in blue here is what we had drawn last time. This is kind of arbitrary. I've just overlaid it over top of a moving average just to show what might happen there. This red line here is to demonstrate a lower frequency cycle that might be in the works. We had a very long peaking cycle here in Kaspa from May of 2023 to November 2023. That was its longest upward expansion. And so far we've had to work all that off here, going sideways. Since we never did come back down to the support line, we've worked it off sideways over time instead. But it appears that these cycles are converging, where our high frequency cycle is starting to turn up. Our altcoin outperformance is starting to turn up. Bitcoin is still in the middle of its cycle. So all of the cycles are converging to looks like it's still going to be an explosive next 12 months. We showed this out of phase idea here, saying that Kaspa peaked here, and instead of coming down to the bottom trend line, which it, quote, should have done, we were out of phase here during this move, 180 degrees. And so that siphoned a lot of the energy out of this particular move here, which should have theoretically gone higher. At least it's in phase now. And then we thought maybe, we'd get this bottoming here, which it appears to be happening. So we are in phase, but this one move here kind of took us out of phase. It took the oomph out of this move and also caused us to kind of break the trend line here and gave this downward move a little bit of extra juice that it might not have otherwise had. Now we are turning up here, and it looks like we should be on our way to the upper band very soon. Now, there have been some discussions in the power law community about the proper way to calculate the power law curve. What I'm showing here is the, quote, correct way to calculate it per Giovanni, and this is the charts you're going to see most places on the internet, like the rainbow chart. This one is calculated starting with the Genesis block as the starting date. But there was this Medium article by Chancellor who made some alterations to the calculation and was able to come up with a chart that fit, with a power law regression that fit the data much better. So there's been some debate, well, is this technically the right way to calculate power law? There's been some discussion. I'm not a power law expert. I can't really say one way or the other. I'm just keeping an eye on both of these two potential curves. They do produce significantly different outcomes for the 2025 peak. One looks like it could possibly hit $2 on a really overperformance. Somewhere seemed like $1.50 would be more reasonable. Chancellor's power law curve seems to peak at max $1 by the fall of 2025. So pretty dramatic difference there. Definitely worth keeping an eye on. Following the conversation on X. For now, this one seems to be the most technically accurate in terms of what a power law should do to obey scale invariance. Now what we're going to do is look at the correlation between Kaspa and Bitcoin. And this is the correlation coefficient. When we have data above 0.8, that indicates a strong positive correlation. 1 would mean a perfect positive correlation. 0 means no correlation at all. A negative number means a negative correlation. So we have, with this shorter term correlation, it looks like we're kind of all over the place. At times we have a strong correlation of 0.85 up to about 0.95 at times, but that only seems to last for a week or so. At times we have no correlation. At other times we have a negative correlation. If I lengthen the period out, we kind of get more long-term data, and we can see that the correlation with Bitcoin is still not very strong. You can see here when Bitcoin was in a bear market, Kaspa was in a bull market, and we had a negative correlation. Then Bitcoin started to go up along with Kaspa. We started to have a stronger positive correlation. In general, though, the strong correlations are very short-lived, and this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out when we get more data to see how it tracks the Bitcoin cycles. But so far, it does not show a strong correlation to Bitcoin. For comparison, let's look at Ethereum. Look at how strong of a correlation Ethereum has to Bitcoin. It spends most of its time above 0.8, with only very brief periods where it goes below that. So that's very interesting to note, and kind of, I would say, harkens back to the Kaspa being digital silver theory, because it seems to be kind of its own animal, unlike most of the other cryptocurrencies, which basically track Bitcoin's price. Now we're comparing Kaspa with the others index, which is the total crypto market cap minus the top 10. So it's kind of a broader altcoin market, you could say. It appears that we have even less of a correlation with the others market than we did with Bitcoin, or roughly similar, but spends very little time strongly correlated with the broader altcoin market. So that is also very interesting, that it seems to kind of be its own animal, at least compared to a lot of other projects. Even Ethereum is pretty much entirely correlated with the broader others market cap. Another important development taking place is this theory that's being talked about on Twitter, with all the questions surrounding the breaking of the power law or the potential of it doing so. One of the theories as to why it might be potentially breaking or shifting power law downwards is the increase in transaction fees for Kaspa miners. For most of its history, Kaspa has had very low fees within the realm of fractions of a penny, until approximately July 1st of 2024, when transaction fees spiked. And I haven't figured out yet why transaction fees spiked in July. If you know why, let us know in the comments. We saw another spike in transaction fees in mid-September, to a much higher level, and this is a logarithmic chart, so this is a pretty dramatic increase in fees for CAS miners. In other words, the percentage of miner revenue is coming significantly more from fees due to KRC20 and whatever this move was here than previously so. And the reason that's important is because within commodities and within Bitcoin, generally it's known that the price floor is approximately where production costs are. So if it costs $30 an ounce to produce an ounce of silver, the floor for silver's price is generally going to land not much lower than production costs, or at least not for very long. And this chart by Plan C shows a similar thing with Bitcoin, where it seems that the estimated production costs are producing a floor for Bitcoin's price, and that production cost seems to follow the power law as well. So going back to Kaspa, if the production costs are decreasing for CAS miners, that could theoretically put a downward pressure on price and then shift the power law downwards. This individual, Hayoko Peep, is also doing a lot of great research on this question. So I've been following that closely. If you're involved in Kaspa, it's definitely something worth keeping an eye on, because it does appear that with the increase in transaction fees, it has seemed to correlate with downward pressure on price. Now, I definitely do take stock in this, so I am watching transaction fees and looking at upcoming changes in the market that might affect transaction fees. For now, I don't know that this fully accounts for the downward pressure in price and the potential breaking of power law, but this is a very strong possibility, and again, something I'll be keeping my eye on. Anyway, only time will tell if all of this is just a total crock of crap and we're all just wasting our time. Wes-tone signing off.